So what are transition and how can we apply transition into our project? Right. So let's say we are going to have, okay, let me just continue for CSS transitions. The CSS transitions allow you to change property value smoothly over a given duration, right? So if we were looking at this one, the hover effect, right? When we apply this hover effect on the box, when you hover onto it, this box came in the middle, right? But what happened? You see, it changes very quickly, right?
Yeah.
It changes very quickly, but the transition will help you to make it smooth. You understand? So transition will change this thing to make it smooth. Like instead of it moving very fast, with the help of transition, you see that it will be moving slowly, right? So let's see. So the CSS transitions allow you to change property values smoothly over a given duration. Like mouse over the element below to see a CSS transition effect. So here we already have what we call the hover effect, then that of the transition. So when we come closer here, you see what happened, right? You see, it is not what changing what very fast because we have something called transition. Transition allow what the property to change very what smoothly. It changes with the value smoothly. So that is this smoothly is what we are looking at here. Like for instance, if you have a car, you want the car to move. First of all, the car has to start, right? So when it
Yeah.
starts, it moves slowly, right? Then when it
Yeah.
reaches in the middle, it goes very fast. And then when it wants to stop, it starts coming slowly. The car cannot just move and slow down just at once, right? If you do that, you are going to what? Be in danger. The driver will be in danger. So normally, if there is an accident, the driver will try to hold on the brake, right?
Yeah.
So that's what causes the accident, right? But if the car is going slowly to a stop, nothing will affect it. So this the transition is what we are looking at. So when you hover onto it, you see that it is growing slowly, and then going back slowly. It grows slowly, it goes back slowly. It grows slowly, and it goes back slowly. So that is what we call transition. So what happens, it happens smoothly over a given period of time. So this one could be maybe it happens within what? 1 second or maybe 5 seconds. I understand. So if based on the duration, you want it to be slower, then if maybe it is 10 seconds, when you hover onto it, it will start growing slowly, depending on the time. So to create transition effect, you must specify the CSS property you want to add a transition to. Understand? You have to specify the property that you want to add a transition to and the duration of the transition, right? So that specify the CSS property you want to add transition to and the duration. So you have 4 transition effects that we normally apply, right? Transition is just a shorthand. As we normally know, every CSS property that we do, we have shorthand, right? As we did in the margin and padding.
Yeah.
The same thing as transition, it also has with shorthand. So when you see transition, it means it's a shorthand. The shorthand for what? For all these four properties. The first one is transition property. That is the property that they are talking about. The second one is transition duration. That is the duration, the time that you want to set for the transition. And the third one is transition timing function, right? The function, the timing that you want to add, that differences. We are timing that what? To like go and come. What is the timing effect or timing function? And then the transition delay. In that timing, how delayed do you want it to be? Do you want it to be delayed very slowly or go faster and delay within that and continue? You understand? So all this duration, timing, and delay are normally you can look at it as when you are driving a car. You understand how you apply the brake, how you apply the gas. You understand? So this way, it's how we look at the transition. The following example shows 100 pixels by 100 pixels div elements. So the div element has specified a transition effect for width property with what? The duration of 2 seconds. So we have this transition property and we have transition duration. So we have it like this, the width 100, height 100. So we have a square box. And we have background color of what? Red. And then transition width is what? 2 seconds, right? So that is the example that they are giving you here, right? So how
Yeah.
to trigger the transition? The transition is triggered when there is change in the element properties. As I told you, initially that what element is just there. But when there is a change in the element properties, then the transition is what triggered. This often happens within pseudo classes, as we did. So this happens within pseudo classes. So you have to have pseudo classes before you apply this transition. So you can have pseudo classes as hover, active, focus, or checked. So from the code above, the transition effect will start when the width property change value. So here, when this width has changed its different value. Understand? So that is where this transition would come true. Now let's see, we add a div hover class that specify a new value for the width property when a user mouse over the div, right? So now we're adding that. Now it was like this initially, right? Before a transition can work, you need to have hover effects, right? Then we added our hover effect as we normally do. We add the div and we add hover. Then now we want something to change. So when we hover onto it, the width will change 300 pixels. Initially, it was what? It was what? 100 pixels. When we hover onto it, it changes to what? 300 pixels. It means the width become bigger, right?
Mhm.
So let's look at the example. Initially, it was this, right? The same thing. But then, what do you need to add? You need to add this transition here. And that transition is, what does it look at? I don't know whether I should, okay, let me just copy this and then put it here for you to see it clearly. Transition, right? Div, where is the div, right? Style, right? So let me clear this and then we open this. Okay, so what are we looking at? This is our body, which we have div, right? In the div, we add what? Internal CSS, which is the div here. And then we add the weight of the div is 100 pixels by 100 pixels, meaning we have what? A box, a square box. We say the background color is red, which is red. And then we say transition with what? To what? So now we are applying two things here, the transition. Normally, this is what we normally have, right? So now we are adding transition, right? transition is here, and then transition as this one is what shorthand. Because for the transition, we have four of them, right? As I told you, we have four of them. Where are they? They are here. These are the transition. 1, 2, 3, 4, right? And this we see transition is shorthand. So the first one will take this transition property. The second will take transition duration. So when you look at an example, we are applying only two for now. This is the shorthand for the transition, and this width is what? Transition property, and these 2 seconds is transition duration, which means transition property, transition duration. So we didn't apply these two. We only apply these two now in this example, right?
Yeah.
Because this transition is just what? A shorthand. But if you don't want to use this shorthand, you can say, no, we don't want to use this shorthand. We want to use the normal name. You can say transition property. It is this, which was width, right? Then you come down and say transition what? Duration. And you see 2 seconds, right? So we are just applying these two things instead of using this shorthand. So we apply these two things now. So the transition property is looking at what we are targeting within here. The target we are targeting within here is the property is the width. So that's why we wrote width here. If we were to target the background color, we say we delete this and we say we are targeting the background or background color, right? So that the property is this background color. But in our case, we are targeting the width. So we just write width. And the transition duration is 2 seconds, right?
Yeah.
So that is what we have. So now as we talk about, we cannot have the transition cannot work without hover effects, right? That's why we did hover effect before we came to transition. That's why when you look at my topic, it was saying that hover effect in transition, because without this hover effect, or without this, because I don't want to call it hover effect only because hover it's a pseudo class, right? Because we have different keywords. We can have hover, we can have active, we can have focus. You understand? All of them are pseudo class. So here we can call it a pseudo class effect. You understand? But mostly the hover effect, it's better in this example because this hover effect give us a real changes. We can see what is going on. That is why it is hover effect is the perfect example. So hover effect has to be there for the transition to work. So that's why here down here we have our hover effects. If not, this one wouldn't work. The transition wouldn't have worked. So for instance, if you delete this transition will not work. It will be there just like that. But if you want it to work, then because that hover effect give us some changes for this div, right? But that is hover. When you hover it, something changes. So we are targeting the width. The initial weight was 100 pixels. And now when we hover it, we want it to be 300 pixels. Normally, that is what we did, right? For example, the example that we did so far, right? So now we are adding transition. Then we said that our transition has a shorthand, which we can say the weight or the transition property in the transition duration. But I said maybe it might confuse you because for initial stage, you want to write all of the properties. So you can say transition property width. And I told you, we all talk about properties. You know properties. These are the properties. Weight is a property. Height is a property. Background color is a properties, right? So
Yeah.
here it said transition property, meaning you are targeting property of what? This. So you choose which property are you targeting. Then you write this. I'm targeting the width. So I'm targeting this width. Then I come down and said, what is the duration you are targeting for the width? Transition duration, you said you want it to happen within 2 seconds, right? So if you are saying that the weight was 100, when I hover on the box, the weight should increase to 300 pixels. Then I ask you, if you say the weight should increase, the duration of that transition should happen within which duration? So you said you want the duration to happen within 2 seconds, right? So when I came closer here, what happens? You see how smooth it is.
Yeah.
Look at, you see, because what you are saying that initially it was 100. That is how it is now. The box is 100, the weight, right? And then when I hover, you say it should increase from this 100 to 300 pixels. So it will increase like this, right?
Yeah.
Then you're asking yourself, you're applying transition property to the weights, saying that when I hover on that to increase it to 300 pixels, make the transition duration to be 2 seconds. So when I hover onto it, that transition that you see happens within 2 seconds. Like this. You see, it happens within 2 seconds.
Mm.
Yeah, I can increase it to 10 seconds. 10 seconds. You see how slow it is going to be. Or you see how it is going, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Ah, so you see how it is going. It's going slowly within so by the time you calculate 10 seconds, you see that it's finish it increasing it. So now if I come close, let's calculate. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Right? You see it's 10 seconds. So it is going, when it's going back, it's also going with the same 10 seconds. You understand?
Yeah.
So that is how the transition also work. So it's just easy. You just need to know what you are targeting. So now we are targeting the transition property of the weight, right? So you can also delete if you don't want to target the weight. You say, I want to target the height. You can say height, right? So the height is the property here. So the height was what? 100, right? Then I can come closer to you, see what happened. So what happened? I'm coming. Why didn't it affect? Why didn't this width affect it? And it's still going here. Look at. You see, why is it doing this? It is doing that because when I said the property, I'm targeting the height was 100, right? But when
Yeah.
I came to the hover, did I put any height there?
No.
No, there's no height. It's the weight was still there. So the weight is still affecting it. And there's no transition, right? Because the transition, I'm targeting the transition of the height. It means that since this one is not working, that duration also will not work. So this is useless because it's not working because I'm targeting the height here. But when I reach the hover, nothing, I didn't put anything there. So that's why here
Mm.
they told you that without without hover effects, the transition cannot work. You see, the transition is triggered when there is a change in the element properties, right? So if I didn't apply the hover effects, that means the transition will not work. You understand? But if I want it to work, then I can come and clear this and say I want the height to now to be maybe 500 pixels. And now I've set the hover to go to the height. and that property is also height. So now it will work. So if I come here, you see that it's going down. That is the height. Going up to 500 pixels, right? You see how
Yeah.
it is, how smooth it is, right? So it is doing that within what? Within 10 seconds. So assuming if I
Mm.
delete this and say, do it within 1 second, look at, you see, that is 1 second. One, one, right?
Yeah.
Mhm. So that's how you can. So you can see some website they will do something like this. How did they do it? It's something easy. Come closer and you see it's they come like you are spreading a flag. You see. So even this one you can use it to do some advertisements like the way you normally see in videos,
Mm.
right? So even here I can say 0.5 seconds. You see, 0.5 seconds. You see. You see how smooth it is. So what
Yeah.
about if for instance here I said I don't want this to I don't want the transition, I don't want them, I deleted them. You see how look at what happened. You see it's not looking good, right? It's not looking good, right? But
Yeah.
if I added a transition, you see that that's why they say the transition make it smooth. Make it smooth. You see. Maybe I can see I want it to happen in 5 seconds. We'll see how it is going. Right. Let me go back. Smooth. Then I can say I want to target the height, right? Can say the width, right? Can say the width. And here I can set the width to be maybe 200 pixels, right? And I want both of them to happen within 5 seconds, right? You see what is happening, right?
Yeah.
So both of them are applying. I want to affect the height and the width, and I give the height and width different, right? But if I want them to be equal, I can also give 500 here. So they all grow in the same direction. Look at, yeah, they grow like a square. So, right? I can change this to maybe happening within 1 second. Then let's see, right? So you can do a lot of things with all of this. Maybe you can change the background. See when it was changing, here I can add background color, right? So here I can say the properties background. You can say background or background color. You can add background color. And then here you can target the background color and set what background color do you want. Now you say I want it to be blue. So what happened, right? That's
Mm.
happening. So when you increase it is turning blue, turn blue, and go back. Or maybe the duration may be 10 seconds. Now it is going to be slow, right? Right? Go back, right?
Yeah.
So you see how the transition also is what help us to achieve this kind of stuff. So this is what they apply. Here is a shorthand. We can use this shorthand if think that oh these things are too big or they are too large to write them. Can use the shorthand. But if you're not familiar with them, you see here, they use the shorthand and they said what? The width, 2 seconds. The height should happen 4 seconds. And the background color should be 3 seconds. So now here they give every word, each and every property has a different word, time duration. So look at that is happening. We can clean this and then put this, right? We are applying all this to this. So look at what changes. You see how it is? So all of them have different time duration. So which one will move faster? The width, because it has what smaller what seconds. It will finish fast. This one, the height. So the background color will finish second, and the height with going down will finish last, because it has the bigger what seconds. So when we look at which one will finish last is the height. So look at, see, right? So that is how it is. Normally, that is what transition is. So drag and drop the correct property and duration to add a transition effect to the width property with 3-second duration. So let's go.
Transition.
Transition, okay.
Height.
Hmm? Read
Height.
it clearly. Read it clearly. What is it saying? I always told you to read it before.
Width.
Wait, okay. And then
3 seconds.
3 seconds. You understand? So drag and drop the correct property, meaning property, which is width, is the property, and duration, which is the timing, to add transition effect to the width, which is the width is as a property, and then the 3-second duration. So see, that is correct, right? So this is the thing that I already explained. The transition is the shorthand property, understand, for the for transition property, right? The time what the transition delay specify what a delay in seconds for the transition effects. This is the delay, and this is the duration. So the difference between the delay and the duration. The duration, you know that it will finish in this on this time. Maybe it will finish within 2 seconds. That's the duration. But the delay is, even though you set it to finish within 2 seconds, within that 2 seconds, how much do you want it to delay? Do you want when it start to delay a bit and continue and delay and continue? So how do you want it to be? To understand? And it's done in seconds too. In the transition property, as we did, we know it is the property that we are targeting, whether it is the width or the background color or whichever property. And then transition timing function, which specify the curve or the speed curve of the transition effect. So these are the 4 distinct property that you need to know in the shorthand, making it 5 what? 5 properties. Okay. All right. So I think I will leave it for today. And then when we meet, I will just try to finish, to quickly finish the transition timing, right? And then we can move on to the shadow and gradients.
Okay.
Okay, so
Thank you for today's notes.
okay, you're welcome.
Can we use this web design to design maybe a invitation card or something like that, like wedding card or birthday card? Can we do that?
Yeah, you can use it to design.
Mm.
It depends on what you want, but every tools has its own what this thing, applicable what area that it uses. You understand? You
Mm,
cannot take something which is meant for this and you use it on this. Although it is possible, you understand?
mm,
But since you are a beginner, maybe it might be difficult for you. So if you are talking about design, maybe the graphic design, what you need to do, either you use Canva or you use what Adobe Illustrator or Adobe Photoshop,
mm,
you understand? Or CorelDRAW, you understand? All these are part of these graphic design tools that you can use in design, like graphic design. But web design, that's why it said web design, website design, and we have graphic design. So they are all different distinct area together, and they all have their own tools that you can use. You understand? Even
mm,
though if you want to just try your hand and say, oh, let me create a flyer with HTML. Yes, you can do it, right?
mm,
But there is some part that it needs you to do. Maybe um, it might be easier when you use what graphic design tools. Because so far as if, for instance, if you are going to cut something, maybe some image, you
mm.
understand? You
Yeah.
can use what border radius, right, to make it round. If you want to have
Mm,
that thing, it's possible. If you want to maybe center any text, you can use what align justify content, align items center to center that to a text.
mm.
If you want to make it bold, you can use font weight to make it bolder, right? So all these
Yeah.
things you can use it, but it will take a lot of time to apply all those CSS style on that section because it
Mm,
needs a lot of what properties you have to apply there. So in each and every what image or every what it's tool, I mean part of that I mean icon or something else that you have to apply each CSS to it.
mm,
But if you are using maybe graphic design tools, you don't need to do that. You just copy paste. You just what use a maybe shape. They are all like some tools within that what that graphic design, like Adobe Shop, Adobe Photoshop, or Adobe
mm.
Illustrator. You understand? Like masking, like this, if you are going to use masking in, assume you are using masking in HTML, how is it going to be done? You can
Yeah.
achieve that, but definitely you need to look at which kind of CSS
Doctor.
uh, to apply.
Okay.
So the easiest way, just you have to use the graphic design tool for each purpose and use the web design tools for each purpose.
Mm,
That's why we all have different tools for. So you cannot take that that let's say tools that are used to repair bicycle and say you are going to use the same tool to repair a car.
mm,
You understand?
mm.
Mm-hmm. Okay. But yet you can just do if you want a simple design to show that oh I can also use CSS styles to design something. It's nice because both web design and graphic design they are all work together. You
Mm.
understand? They all move in the same way, but with different style that you have to apply.
Okay.
That is how it is.
Mm, okay.
That is what. So most of it, like if you look at the website or web design that we are doing, most of them are what are graphics, right?
Mm,
They are
yeah.
graphic text. So if you know how to do graphic design and you know how to do website design, you don't have problem in. So when it comes to graphic, you can design a graphic and put it inside the website. You understand? Maybe there are some properties that instead of you to use maybe CSS on that maybe image, it will easier for you to do the graphic design and just put it. on the website.
Mm.